If you mix Spy Kids, National Treasure, and Carmen Sandiego, you will be no closer to understanding what the 39 Clues is really about. So far, Dan and Amy have traversed 4 continents in the span of a single month. So far, they've been lucky in attaining 5 clues, but the game is about to get more dangerous than ever, and their relatives are only one of the dangers haunting them. There's also the Madrigals, a mysterious group with unknown motives. Amy and Dan have 2 models to live by: trust no one, and beware the Madrigals.
They're back. Beware the hooks.
So Dan and Amy are headed to Australia, not even sure if a clue is at the end of the trail they're on, just knowing it will help uncover more about their parents. These kids really need some closure. We begin our next adventure with Amy, Dan, and Nellie having split up at the airport in Sydney, Australia to lose any possible tails. Then they rendezvous to take a bus to find Amy and Dan's Uncle Shepard, a longtime friend of their dad's. On the bus, Amy has her necklace stolen by an old woman. They stop and exit the bus to try and find her to no avail. When Amy stops to sulk, Dan points out the military and police museum that they can visit while Nellie waits outside with Saladin. Inside, Amy follows a familiar-looking woman who corners her in a recreated cell and reveals herself to be Isabel Cabral, Ian and Natalie's mother. She taunts Amy, imploring her to trust Isabel before vanishing. After Dan finds Amy, they retrace Isabel's steps in the museum and realize she stole a mugshot. Dan, with his eidetic memory, recalls that it was some guy named Bob Troppo, a fictional historical figure who tried to assassinate Mark Twain with a cane that held a concealed knife. Amy recalls how Mark Twain was a Janus. After the museum, they head to their Uncle Shep's place.
Hi, Uncle.
He apologizes for not keeping in touch and not getting to the funeral. He did try to call at one point, but their Aunt Beatrice didn't allow it. That woman's cruelty knows no bounds.
Baby.
Shep gets a call and calls for everyone to file out ASAP. Turns out, it's just to go surfing. They get a quick surf lesson, and Nellie winds up doing the best out of all of them, the first to pick up the surfing technique the fastest.
She's an icon, she's a legend, and she is the moment. Now, come on now.
While Nellie goes to sunbathe and Uncle Shep heads out to do more surfing, the Holt family shows up. Eisenhower tries to drown Dan, and threatens more unless he gets a clue. They're temporarily saved by a wave crashing into him. Uncle Shep pulls his friends in to help get rid of the Holt family so Amy and Dan can make a break for it.
How many times do we have to teach you this lesson, old man?
Cut to Irina sitting on the steps of the Sydney Opera House. She is thinking while on her latest assignment to find the Cahill children, thinking about how she has grown disillusioned with the leadership of Vikram and Isabel Cabral, thinking how Grace may have actually concocted a clue hunt to end the 39 clues for once and for all, thinking about the husband and child she lost. Back at Shep's place, he gives them an itinerary of Hope and Arthur's travels. Then, Dan and Amy mention Bob Troppo and ask Shep if he can help. He agrees to fly them to a friend of his in the outback to find out more. The mood is ruined by a call from Ian Cabral to Amy. He tells her he knows that her parents were murdered, and if she wants to know more, she'll meet with him. After she hangs up, Dan teases her about being in love with Ian.
That's nasty.
Amy lies about wanting to stay back, while Dan and Nellie go ahead with Uncle Shep. She goes to meet Ian at the meetup point. Along the way, we get a taste of how much her skills have grown when it comes to operating like a secret agent, checking for tails very casually, wearing a simple disguise. These kids have grown so much in a month's time.
You know what that is? It's gross.
Irina catches Amy off guard and holds her hostage with her poison nails. She leads Amy to an old pub and down into its basement to a series of secret tunnels.
Secret tunnel, secret tunnel.
That runs under it. Irina tells her she needs to remember who was there that night of the fire. They continue to walk past rats, which Amy comments are common in her family.
And
Irina lets her out near the harbor and tells her to go home. She even offers a clue, Rosemary, and tells her not to trust anyone except her own memory. At the harbor, she runs into Ian and Isabel, who have her come aboard their boat. Aboard the speedboat, Isabel tells Amy she wants to form an alliance.
Shit. Here we go again.
Anne tells Amy that Irina killed her parents. She wants Amy and Dan to join them so they can take down the Madrigals. Amy says no, so Isabel uses Chum to lure in sharks, threatening Amy for information on the clues they've gathered so far. When Ian tries to speak up, Isabel scolds her son. Hamilton pulls up on a paraglider and whisks Amy away towards the beach. He drops her off and heads towards his family, telling her that she owes him one. Their little team up there was kinda cute. Also, Amy tells herself she cannot tell Dan the truth about their parents being murdered just yet.
What? You mean just lie? You really think someone would do that?
Back with the Cabras, Isabel is yelling at Irina for failing to provide counter surveillance. She throws the jade necklace she stole from Amy, telling Irina it was a waste of time to steal it. She orders Irina to call in the fixer and then takes her children shopping.
We're gonna go.
On the way to the car, Isabel berates Natalie and Ian, exposing the environment they have grown up in. These are just kids, man. They shouldn't have to walk on eggshells to support their parents. Then we have Irina thinking about how she wasn't there when her son died and how she won't let Isabel tell her to do something that will only bring more regret. When Amy arrives back at Shep's place, she nearly faints from the adrenaline crash. Dan wraps her mom's vintage leather jacket around her that they got from Shep. In the lining, Amy finds a letter from an AE to a GP. It's Amelia Earhart,
Lady? Who you calling lady? The name is Amelia.
who is a Cahill, writing to George Putnam, her husband. She wrote of visiting several strongholds that matched the places Arthur and Hope visited years ago. She also learns Amelia was a Madrigal, the branch that Isabel said was formed by Roll Cahills, but Amy is in disbelief. That night, Amy has a nightmare about the night of the fire, about her parents arguing with Isabel Cabral and others, until little Amy came downstairs in her koala pajamas. This clues in the visitors as to where Hope and Arthur had been traveling as of late. Amy feels like she betrayed her parents.
It's not your fault.
What?
It's not your fault.
I know.
It's not your fault.
In the morning, they get ready to head out. From the letter, they trace their parents' travels in Adelaide to Coober Pedy, knowing that's where they need to check. Later at the airfield, they board Shep's plane moments before Isabel crashes through the gate in a Hummer, barreling towards the plane as it's about to take off. Isabel was willing to risk her children's lives for the clue hunt. Talk about toxic parenting from this old lady.
Baby.
After flying for some time, Nellie takes over for Shep. Apparently, she has flying experience and a pilot's license. They arrive at Coober Pedy, visiting the opal fields to see a friend of Shep's. Jeff takes our heroes to visit someone who may know more about Bob Troppo. Jeff introduces them to Ken,
'Cause I'm just Ken.
an old man whose dad sold Amelia Earhart an opal ring. He tells them about Bob. He had dug the old mine and a room when he was alive, the same place that Ken now owns. He shows Dan and Amy, who find a message from their parents to Grace, pointing toward the old mine. When they go to investigate, they find a second room of his in the mine. They find a message scrawled within a series of repeated words that read, "Ring of Fire," over and over. The message points towards a hidden compartment in the wall. Dan pulls out a box with an envelope inside, but it's already empty. On the envelope, Amy notices the letters RCH. Amelia Earhart was looking for an H. It must be Bob Troppo's real name. Before they can learn more, Isabel Cabral and her children drop some venomous spiders down, as well as a taipan, a deadly venomous snake,
Snakes. Why did it have to be snakes?
trapping them down there in the mine. The panic makes Dan have an asthma attack, but he has his inhaler. It helps, but Amy still thinks he needs medical attention. Shep and Nellie break a hole through the wall to get to the other side where Ken's place is. Then they take Dan to a doctor and have authorities remove the deadly animals from the mine. Dan and Amy think of the clue, figuring the C in RCH stands for Cahill, and since he used Bob, maybe his real name is Robert. After some searching, she comes to the conclusion, and so have the Cabras, also learning it's Robert Cahill Henderson. He had once traveled from Jakarta to Sydney. Isabel reveals it was the fixer who provided the deadly animals. Irina also thinks about how Isabel is growing tired of the Cahills and will soon release her rage on them. Back with Amy, she's info dumping about Henderson being a chemist who championed Charles Darwin's theories and was engaged to a cousin of Queen Victoria. Amy tells Dan they need to head for Darwin, keeping up their following of their parents' trail. On the plane, Amy fills in Dan on Henderson, how he had a lab on Krakatoa, and must have been assembling the clues, which is why the other branches have been trying to locate him since the 19th century, and how the island of Java was located in the Ring of Fire. Shep's plane doesn't have the range to get to Jakarta, but he gets them on a plane flying out of Darwin.
But she doesn't have the range. I'm sorry.
But they see the Cabras at the airport, and to avoid them, Shep is able to get a pilot friend to lend him a jet to fly. Shep jokes that Nellie hasn't flown anything like this before, but she corrects him, saying she's flown from Akron to Iceland. The kids find these growing surprises curious. Before they can board, security stops them and accuses him of kidnapping Dan and Amy. This time, it is their cousin Irina pretending to bring Dan and Amy home to Boston for social services. But then, security learns of a wanted woman by the name of Irina Spassky. While security talks, Irina warns the Cahills that they're in danger and heading towards a trap. She also reveals that Amy didn't tell Dan that their parents were murdered. Amy, Dan, and Nellie casually slip away in the commotion and steal the plane to fly away.
Don't be suspicious. Don't be suspicious. Don't be suspicious. Don't be suspicious.
On the plane, Dan is mad at Amy for not telling him the truth. He tells her she is really acting like a Cahill. Dan and Amy still aren't speaking even after landing in Jakarta and checking into a hotel. When they finally do speak, it's in the middle of the night. Dan confesses he doesn't trust Nellie. It's like she was trained. They decide to head out to the volcano without telling Nellie after peeking through her emails and finding mysterious emails from Clash Girl. Emails that had a second password protection. Take a taxi to the harbor and from there rent a boat. The boat isn't able to get close to Rakata, that's the island Krakatoa used to be on, as the volcano is too active. They take a detour through the Thousand Islands. Amy and Dan get off on an island because they see a rosemary plant and assume that that's where Robert was assembling the 39 clues. They tell the driver to pick them up the next day. Back with Nellie, she checks her emails and receives an update from Clash Girl about a red alert. She knows Dan and Amy are suspicious of her.
Don't be suspicious. Don't be suspicious.
After they learned about her flight experience. Cut to Irina doing counter surveillance for Isabel Cabral, where Natalie and Ian get the jump on her, and Natalie breaks her finger to use Irina's own nails against her. Back on the island with Dan and Amy, they run into none other than their uncle Alistair O. Alistair agrees to exchange information with them again.
You can't keep getting away with it!
Telling them how Robert was engaged to a Lucian, and through his Lucian connections, may have acquired the 39 clues, and, using his ECAT intelligence, was able to set up a lab on Krakatoa. He barely escaped the eruption. Alistair also shows them a letter from Robert, and together they work to decipher its meaning. When a storm blowing in interrupts them, Alistair invites Dan and Amy to stay until it blows over. They update Nellie so she doesn't freak out anymore.
So what I'm gonna do now is freak out.
That night, Amy wakes with a start, only to realize she can smell smoke. The building they're in is on fire.
No!
Alistair also rushes in with wet towels and ushers the children out the window onto the ledge. But it's too high to jump and no safe place to jump to. That's when they spot Irina running with the bamboo pole, vaulting up to the roof to help them get down. Irina hands Amy the jade dragon necklace and they each shimmy down one at a time. But then the pole bursts into flames, stranding Irina on the roof. Yet it's no use. Irina perishes as the roof collapses, the last thing she sees being the stars in the sky. The next morning, Dan and Amy are on the beach. After a heartfelt moment between the grieving orphans, Dan figures out the poem is hinting at water being the clue. They agree not to tell Alistair just yet. Nellie arrives soon after to pick them up. Dan and Amy make up their mind to find out who was there the night of the fire, to fight for justice for their parents. And that's where our story ends for now. On a beach in the Pacific Ocean, covered in ash, waiting for their au pair to come and rescue them, ready to set out to uncover the truth and bring justice to the death of their parents, even if that means following the 39 clues to its end. We've found 2 clues, Rosemary and water, and we've lost a main character, sacrificing her life for 2 orphans who have bore witness to too much tragedy. Find out what happens next time on It's Gay to Read when we delve into a new adventure with our favorite Cahill siblings. Don't forget to like, leave a comment, and subscribe to my channel for more bookish content. See you in the next one. Bye!
Bye!